Today is a 271st Friday group meeting. The topic is DNA forensics and the law. Speaker is topmost senior advocate Mr. Haran and President Delhi High Court Bar Association. So he is going to deliver. And today program goes like, first we will go for felicitation. We give an opportunity to one person, then he will give you a lecture. That's live. Yeah. Okay. He is our member. Our member, anything achieved in his life as a constitutional post, as a president, so he always felicitating. Hari, this is a.
Thank you so much, Sheshu.
Yes.
This is our style. Thank you so much. It's really an honor.
Now I request Harshit will say a few lines about today's speaker, Mr. Haran.
It gives me great pleasure and a deep sense of honor to welcome our distinguished guest, Senior Advocate N. Haran sir. His remarkable journey in the field of law stands as an inspiration to every legal aspiring professional. Sir completed his law degree from Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, and has begun his professional journey with enrollment at Delhi Bar in 1987. Over the years, he has built a remarkable career on the criminal side of legal practice without any family background in law, purely driven by passion, hard work, and determination. In recognition of his outstanding contribution to criminal law, the Delhi High Court designated him as a senior advocate in 2013. In a career spanning more than 3 decades, Sir has appeared in some of the most prominent and defining criminal cases. His work includes appearances in Surahu's tragedy, the Shivani Bhatnagar murder case, the Tehelka case, and as a special counsel for prosecution in the Salman Khan's Black Buck case. He has also represented clients in major matters such as cash for vote scam, the 2G Spectrum case, the coal scam, and many among others. His counsel has been sought by several eminent personalities, including many politicians and industrialists, which is a testament to the trust and respect he commands in the legal field. Currently, Sir is also serving as a president of Delhi High Court Bar Association, continuing to lead and inspire the bar through his wisdom, humility, and commitment to justice. We are truly privileged to have him among us, a stalwart of the bar, a fearless advocate for civil liberties, and a true inspiration for all of us. Guys, please join me in extending him a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Harshit. Before you start, I given an opportunity to one person to say a few words. Could state our senior man,
Sir, it is a privilege for me that I have been chosen by my friend G.Seshagiri Garu to represent all of our colleagues, learned friends present here, and in future will be watching you on YouTube. It's a very popular one and it is forever. And I know your time is precious. In that you have taken out time to join us, and you will be enlightening us with your experience and knowledge, which each one of us is actually waiting here in a pin drop silence since it was your lecture. This is unusual. So it's a great pleasure, and we are sure we all are going to get the best from you, and extremely grateful to you for coming and briefing us on that issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. Now I request Haran, today's speaker.
This should be our future gown.
I would prefer to stand in front of this august audience. I'll feel uncomfortable sitting and then delivering a lecture. I do not claim much amount of expertise. This was more than what I have achieved in life, what was said. Sheshu being a friend is being partial. I am no great shakes as a lawyer. I am one amongst you only. Maybe a little more luckier at some point of time I got designated. But I am still one amongst you. I continue to learn, and essentially my entire practice has been more on the trial side, and then subsequently on the appellate side as what brought me here. Today's topic, in fact, I had suggested, Sheshu gave me a choice. So I said, okay, Sheshu, let me speak on art, forgeries and fake. And Sheshu said no. So I asked him the reason. He said, it's a very elitist topic. I don't want you to address on a topic which caters to the elite. You cater to something which is more akin to everybody. So that is how I then decided, all right, then let us talk about the DNA. Because the DNA exists in each one of us. So there is nothing elite about it. So I will begin with the DNA. You will have to bear with me for a while because the lecture will move from various aspects ranging from science to law. So a little bit of science for those who have not had it as a subject. A few of us who learnt it down the line like us while practicing. I will try and be as simplistic as possible. You will have to bear with me. There are certain aspects even which I do not know. So my ignorance also you will have to forgive. So let us begin with this very interesting topic called DNA and the science of forensics and the law. The law will come the last. Now when I talk about the DNA, you see, when I was researching into the history of the DNA, I also started to think that, you see, if it is existing in everybody, it gave me a specific question that as to when was I born? So I came to this that I was born in the year 1962. So it brought me to another question. What happened in 1962 which was, important and historic apart from my birth? So the answer that came to my mind at that time was the Indo-China War. He said, Indo-China War was all about death. People dying. So there was nothing great. So moving a little further, I suddenly hit upon this that in 1962, the Nobel Prize in relation to the discovery of the structure of the DNA was given to 3 people in medicine. It was Dr. Watson, Crick and Wilkins. There was a 4th as well who had arrived at the structure of the DNA independently, who went unrecognized. She was a lady called Dr. Franklin. She independently came to this structure, but unfortunately was not recognized then, but was recognized post her death. Though she did not get the Nobel Prize, but her name is also taken with as much reverence as these persons. So when I started delving a little further into this molecular structure of the DNA, what the DNA stands for is deoxyribonucleic acid. You also have the ribonucleic acid, but that structure is very different from the deoxyribonucleic acid because this structure is very unique in many ways. Not only because it is the unit of life, but the manner in which this structure has been created by nature. The best element of this structure is that it is self-replicating. A strand breaks, it will regenerate itself. Most of you have seen the example of an earthworm. You see, if an earthworm gets cut, that little portion of the earthworm which gets cut regenerates itself. Somewhat akin to that, the structure of the DNA also has the ability to regenerate itself. Now, what is it that is available in this structure which gives it that ability to regenerate itself is what we need to look into. Because that will help us a little later when we go into the aspects of forensics as well. So to tell you the structure of the double helix, this is like a staircase. How many of you have been to Teesari? Oh, there are quite a few. So if you go to Teesari is a very confined space. And what ingenious lawyers in Teesari have done, in that confined space, they have built one floor over the other. And how do they access that floor? They access that floor with a staircase which is generally spiral around a pole. That is exactly the structure of a DNA. The double helix which rotates around a pole. The pole is the base around which the wrapping of the staircase takes place, that pole, the base, is essentially made of a phosphate sugar bond. So the wall that we have behind, the support that we have in the form of the pole is a sugar phosphate bond, and the staircases that you see which wrap around it have got 4 nitrogenous bonds which bond with each other by covalent bonds, hydrogen bonds which are of 2 bonds are called covalent bonds, more than 2 are called 3 bonds, a trivalent bond. So you have adenine and thymine, 2 nitrogenous bases bonding with each other with a covalent bond, and guanine and cytosine also bonding with each other, this time with a triple bond, a trivalent bond. This in a nutshell is the shape of the DNA, the double helix, which will concern all of us. Now, if you people could, I think we brought a projector, but then I don't know whether we can make it work here, but this is a staircase which you see. This staircase that you see is essentially the structure of the DNA. Now comes the second question, that the DNA that we talk of, where does it exist? Each one of you has heard about chromosomes. Chromosomes are those structures, one of which you inherit from your father and the other you inherit from your mother. And every human being by nature is blessed with 22 pairs. You have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 22 of which are called autosomal chromosomes, and the last pair is a sex chromosome by which life is transmitted. XX will produce a Sheshu, XY will probably produce a Rekha. XY will produce a Sheshu and XX will produce a Rekha. Life is propagated through the sex chromosome. These 23 pairs of chromosomes exist in trillions of cells of which your human body is made of. It is there in every cell of your human body. So therefore, the question is that supposing we had more than 23 chromosomes, right? There could be a mutation. Do you understand a mutation? Mutation is a sudden change brought about by maybe circumstances like pollution, radiation. A sudden change happening in the cell structure, affecting the cell structure. And instead of 23 chromosomes, if you probably had 24, what would have happened? Most of you would have been like a chimpanzee, because the chimpanzees have 24 chromosomes. We are very closely related, that is why. The difference is only 1 chromosome, mind you. Right? So nature has its own way of determining things. More number of chromosomes would probably have produced an elephant. So it is all based on this dynamics. Something very small as a chromosome determines so many things. Having said that, these chromosomes, where do they find their place in a cell? Most of them, you find them in the nucleus of a cell. A cell has got something called a nucleus. Where did all this idea come from? You see, it is not that Watson and Crick and Wilkins, they dreamt about this structure. You will be interested in knowing that there was a Nobel Prize winning physicist in 1940 by the name of Erwin Schrödinger. He is credited with the wave theory of physics and is also a Nobel Prize winner. It is he who gave this idea in a very small book called What is Life? That is the book that he wrote. And from there originated this idea where he said that probably life is transmitted from a confined space, of some material in a confined space which gets transmitted from generation to generation. This idea, which was propounded by Erwin Schrödinger, a physicist, got these persons thinking on this aspect. And this thought process, which originated from there, resulted in the discovery of this structure. Now, having said that, till now I have spoken about the chromosome. In the chromosome is packed this DNA double helix which I spoke of in very tight coiled forms. 99.9% of this genetic material of the DNA is common amongst all of us. So why is it that there is difference? This entire science of forensics is based on the difference that is there. And where is that difference seen? That difference is seen in that 0.1% of the DNA in the chromosomes that you find, which is different. That 0.1% initially was thought to be junk DNA. It is all junk. Why? Because it never coded for any character. If you talk about the genetic structure in terms of the other 99%, in a DNA, a particular portion, you see, it's completely comprising of bonds, which I just told you, of binding between A, T, G and C. These are sequences which you will find, A, T, G, C. It can be in a sequence of 4, it can be in a sequence of 2. That little section on the DNA, which accounts for a character, a small section in that huge strand somewhere will account for a character in you. The color of your eyes. Your color is green, mine is black, somebody else is brown. The Scandinavians have blue colored eyes. It is one portion in that strand, a small portion in that, which determines that character. That portion which determines the character is called a gene. And what is the science all about? The science is genetics. That is where you get the origin of the word genetics, from the word gene. Having said that, I move a little further. Now that we have understood the nature and the structure and the fact that there is some portion of the DNA which does not code for any character, they initially characterized that portion as the junk DNA. You see, and lawyers are used to dealing with junk. We normally deal with junk in some form or the other. And we know that junk is not junk. Junk can be very precious. And that is what the scientists also realized. Because this junk DNA is that portion when a mutation happens in relation to your environment, in relation to an exposure to radiation or to any such situation. The mutation part confines itself to the junk DNA. That is why, despite the fact that the pollution in Delhi is so high, you people still are somewhat normal. Because all that is affecting your junk DNA. If any one of it had an effect in your normal DNA, probably one day we would have lost our speech out here. All that is not happening because it is confining itself to the junk DNA part. But interestingly, that is only one aspect of it. This junk DNA assumed more importance because this is where the scientists found, and especially the forensic scientists found, that there was a variation. What is this variation? As I told you, the strands which were there, the nitrogenous bases which I spoke of, they form a repetitive sequence. The repetitive sequence is there from one portion which comes from the father, one portion which comes from the mother in the chromosome. The scientists, forensic scientists, recognized 24 of such sites. At the moment there are 24 which are recognized. In those 24 sites which have been recognized, you have repetitive strands of these nitrogenous bases which are called standard tandem repeats, STRs. So these nitrogenous bases repeat with a particular regularity at these particular sites which they have identified for the purposes of forensics. Now how is it that the variation happens? Because the repeats are also the same. If it is ATC, it will be ATC, this side as well as that side. The variation is in the number of repeats. It will be 3 at one part of the chromosome which is coming from the mother, 4 at the part of the father. So the repeat is different. This repeat is different in relation to every individual. It will be different in relation to you, it will be different in relation to me at those particular sites. This repeat which is different, the standard tandem repeat which is different on the one chromosome coming from the father and one chromosome coming from the mother, that provides the variation which is studied by forensic experts to come to a conclusion as to whether a particular individual, his presence was there in relation to a crime spot or not. I will come to that portion a little later. I will then, once I deal with one section, I will move on to a particular case study, a case which I argued here in the Supreme Court by the name of Rabbu versus State. It was a death reference where forensic evidence had a significant role to play. It is one thing that the Supreme Court, in a death reference, I was pitching for an acquittal. The Supreme Court did not agree for an acquittal. I had to settle for something lesser. But I have my differences in relation to the judgment which was passed by the Supreme Court. So I will present my case to you people and leave it to your judgment as to whether the Supreme Court could have delivered a different judgment in light of the forensic evidence which was available in the form of DNA evidence. Having said that, I come back to where I was in relation to the difference, the variation, the difference that is there. This difference that you see in the repeats are termed alleles. The allelic difference is what is studied in forensics. To show to you, I am just showing you a portion of the chromosome where this repeat is somewhat different. This is the chromosome. I hope all of you can see. This side is inherited from the mother. If you people will see, it has got 4 repeats. The brown part is coming from the father. And there you will find that there are 5 repeats. So the allelic number out here is 4, 5. Similarly, these allelic structures will be examined at 24 locations to come to a correct conclusion as to whether that person's alleles whom we are trying to inquire into were present there or not. So essentially, it will be based on a statistical analysis of ultimately what happens. So broadly, I have told you that this is the beginning of what is known as DNA profiling. The profile of every individual who is to be studied will be generated by this particular method. And what is this method? I have just given to you the characteristics. What is the method? The method is that first and foremost, since it is junk DNA, and this junk DNA is existing with the normal DNA otherwise. So this junk DNA first has to be isolated, separated and isolated. So that is the first procedure in forensics, that there is isolation of this particular aspect in relation to the locuses or the places where we have to conduct this study. So the first process of isolation happens. There are enzymes which are used as tools to cut these portions and isolate them. Once the isolation process is completed, comes the next process. Whether this material which we have connected, is it sufficient? Sufficiency is addressed in 2 ways. One, it should not be in excess. If it is in excess, the result will be also disastrous, will not be correct. It should not be too little. If it is too little, it will not be enough to generate data. So comes the second important process, and that is a process called quantitization. That quantitization process is very, very important because there is a particular ratio of quantitization which is required to be done. This will be important when you are cross-examining a witness who is an expert witness as far as DNA forensics is concerned. I will come to that also a little later. So the second process is quantitization. The third aspect is that once it is quantitized that yes, this is the amount which we require to make a study, we need more of material to understand as to whether that variation really exists or not. So comes the third process where they amplify this particular part. Once you know that this quantity is sufficient enough, then the amplification of that part happens. And how does that amplification happen? As I told you, the DNA is a self-replicating structure. So one strand is broken, automatically it generates the requisite bond on the other side. You only need to break a strand and the other strand will regenerate itself automatically. A will bind with T, or T will bind with A, G will bind with C, or C will bind with G, and that strand will be again duplicated. So what happens in geometric progression? You see, arithmetical progression takes time. Geometrical progression especially multiplies very fast. So this replication happens in geometrical progression. So from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 64, it goes like that. So that amplification process then creates for us enough data to look into those locations which we want to study where this variation happens. Then comes the next step, which is the next marriage. You see, interestingly, science and especially sciences, biological or physical, their marriage happens every now and then. The fields meet at some point. Organic life and inorganic life has got a quality of meeting each other and drawing from each other. So from physics came the structure of life, the DNA, when it was thought by Erwin Schrödinger that yes, there is something. You see? And from there developed the structure, a molecular biological structure. And from that molecular biological structure, now I am going to the next aspect, which is a very important aspect, as to how to analyze this. That is coming from chemistry. So here you have chemistry also marrying itself into this biological process. The molecular bonds which are existing and the alleles which we want to study at those particular locations. After amplification, because the DNA breaks into bigger structures, smaller structures. You cannot say how big a structure it will break or how small it will be. So they are of various sizes. What is done then? There are dyes which attach themselves to these nitrogenous bonds. Colored dyes. Colored dyes which come from chemistry, which are aniline dyes, will attach themselves to the nitrogenous bonds. So you have different colored dyes which are depicting the color. When that is run by way of electrophoresis, which basically means that you are putting a negative charge and a positive charge at one end and sending this through a liquid, that electrical charge will ultimately illuminate the dyes which are there on the nitrogenous bonds. And we will be able to map that or a graph. So you have the allelic structure which is mapped onto a graph. You will have different peaks of the allelic structures, different sizes. And the smaller the section of the DNA, the faster it will move. The heavier sections will move a little slower. So the graph patterns will be available accordingly. Then these graph patterns are studied statistically. Now there is a marriage of statistics with this to analyze these alleles which are now projected on that graph. Based on that statistical analysis, we come to a conclusion as to whether the suspect was present there or not. So you see how the process is working. So I have, in a very small, compact way, tried to explain to you the process. Moving from here, let us go on to see as to how this is brought to use. Initially, when the Supreme Court was dealing with forensic evidence in criminal matters, the DNA, there was this entire perception that when it is a question of a scientific inquiry in relation to the presence of a person at a spot or in relation to the paternity of a person, you have heard at times, children are born and there are disputed paternities, right? There are huge inheritances to be inherited. There are fights which open up on that. The most recent that I can now recollect is a fight which is happening in relation to the Kapoor family. Right? So These kind of fights are very normal. I remember there was a politician, if I remember correctly, Kamlapati Tripathi.
Bahuguna.
Tiwari. ND Tiwari.
ND Tiwari.
There suddenly a son of his landed up one day saying that I am his son.
He accepted.
And then ultimately he won his case on the basis of the DNA testing which happened. So at one point of time the Supreme Court was of the view that this is an exact science. You see? Because DNA is very individualistic. Your DNA is different from mine. I look different from you because my DNA is different. Yours is different. And if scientists are saying that yes, this conclusion is based on the fact that the DNA matches, the result is inevitable. So they accepted the DNA report as such.
So thanks for your biotechnologist. You
So-
are biotechnologist.
No, I am going a little further.
So that I have heard it.
Now I am going a little further in relation to this. That there also in the Supreme Court, slowly the opinion of judges changed with the development of science. Earlier, we would get convictions on this very basis that this evidence is good enough to convict. And you will be interested in knowing that one of the landmark judgments in this case was a case titled Manoj versus State, which came a little later. And do you know who passed that judgment? Anybody can take a guess? This is in a lighter vein. That judgment was interestingly passed by Justice Bela Trivedi. And it was an acquittal, mind you. And what was it based on? It was based on this aspect that this cannot be a perfect science. And what was the reasoning given? And the reasoning was very sound. To her credit, I must say that the reasoning was sound. The reason given was that ultimately a DNA report is based on the statistical analysis which is done of the material. And how is statistical analysis done? It is done and based on the law of probability. So anything which is based on the law of probability cannot be something which will be beyond reasonable doubt. So at best, this evidence could be only corroborative. There should be other evidence otherwise. This evidence could lend corroboration to the evidence that exists otherwise. It is not irrefutable in nature. It is not conclusive proof. Because there is an element of probability here. So therefore, today the law of the land is as has been determined by Justice Bela Trivedi in Manoj versus State, that this evidence is corroborative at best. And she has good reasons to say so. Because this evidence is based on the opinion of an expert. The expert comes and opines under section 45 of the Evidence Act. The corresponding sections, I belong to the old school. Kindly pardon me, you will have to read the corresponding new sections in the BNS, BNSS and the other acts which have come in. But the sections are more or less the same. Like 45 exists most probably 39 in the new Evidence Act, which talks about opinion evidence. It is opinion evidence at the best. And opinion evidence, now I am going into certain aspects of looking into this in respect of a defense lawyer. So that opinion evidence which is expressed should be based on material as to how the expert came to that opinion. So therefore, the report which is given has to accompany with the report the basis on which that report was arrived at. Normally what happens? When you get into a trial, whether it is a rape case or it is a murder case or any other case which relates to expert evidence in terms of the DNA expert, you will find that only the opinion is coming saying that the presence is established or the presence is not there on the basis of an allelic table. An allelic table is produced, and along with that it is said that this matches or this doesn't match, and this is why the opinion is being given. And generally that opinion is given by an expert who is exempted from appearing in a court of law and deposing. In the CRPC, old CRPC, there used to exist a provision called 293(2), where a certain number of experts, like the director of an institute, the main scientist who arrives at whose conclusions are the basis of the report, these were certain persons who were exempted from coming to court, and what they would opine was admitted directly as evidence in relation to the opinion that was given. So what does the prosecution normally do? The prosecution sends a report which is signed by one of these persons and tells the court to take it as such, admit it as a process which is admissible straight away in light of those provisions. But what is the word of caution for a defense lawyer here? I am speaking from the point of view of a defense lawyer. I happen to be one. 293(2) in fact also talks about this, that the court, in the discretion of the court, the expert can be called, even if he is a person who is one of those in that category who is exempted. In the discretion of the court, he can be called to depose in relation to the opinion which he has given. It was thought to be a discretionary kind of an exercise. But there are rulings of various courts. I will give you the rulings by the end of the lecture. You can collect it. There is one judgment, a very interesting judgment passed by the government of by the High Court of Rajasthan, by the name of Abid Hussain versus State of Rajasthan. It specifically talks about this aspect. It says that if an application is made by the defense, then the court will have no choice but to call the opinion, which is the expert who has rendered the opinion, to subject himself to a cross-examination. So one of the first things that you need to do is, when a report like this comes, kindly move an application seeking the summoning of the said witness for a cross-examination, because you need to challenge the basis on which that report was given. After having done that, we come to the next aspect as to what is the basis on which you will challenge it. You see, for that, a few things you need to keep in mind. Where, you see, as far as the DNA is concerned, the DNA is available everywhere. I came here, I shook hands with Sheshu, I embraced him, a portion of my DNA went in his hands, a portion of his DNA got transferred to me. I stood here, I placed my hands on this desk, a little bit of my DNA, I have left my mark here, in the Supreme Court, if I can say so. This is called touch DNA. The touch DNA, though, is minuscule, but it is left all the same. So which is that portion in the human body which will yield enough DNA for tests to be carried out which will have genuineness in it? Those portions from the human body are the body fluids of the human beings. When I mean body fluids, spit, sputum, blood, nothing better than blood, semen. Any body fluid that you can think of is a rich source of DNA. So generally, the source material of the DNA which is taken for reference, for comparison, has to be from one of these sources. So a line of cross-examination will be directed towards the source of that DNA. What was the source which was taken at that point of time? These were questions which will be directed to the relevant witness. Did he look into that source? Did he have sufficient DNA to examine? So that will be one point of inquiry. Most of you must have heard of NDPS cases. I don't know, many of you must have done NDPS cases also. You know, in NDPS cases, what is most important? What is important is the link evidence. The link evidence is also equally important as far as DNA and forensics is concerned. Because once how the DNA is extracted also becomes relevant. For instance, blood. I gave an example of blood. Now, blood can be available in 2-3 states in a crime scene. It could be available in a dried state on a bed sheet. How is it to be collected? The bed sheet is generally air dried, packed, sealed, and then thereafter the chain of custody is to be maintained. If it is a blood sample drawn from the accused, say, or maybe, as I will show to you and exhibit to you in the case which I did, Rabu. In Rabu's case, it was a rape case wherein blood was to be drawn even from the deceased because the lady got killed as well. The girl child got killed as well. But she died after 4 days of the incident. There was an occasion to take her blood sample or take her sputum sample. It was not done. What was done instead as a reference sample from the lady, from the little girl child, the facts are gross. You must excuse me for that. Because death reference cases generally and in criminal law we deal with gross cases. So you'll have to pardon me when I go into the grosser parts. The grosser part of that case was, I'll just give you the factual scenario so that I can deal with that also in this very lecture. In Rabu's case, this was a case which related to a remote village in Madhya Pradesh. This girl child was around 11 years old to 12 years old, would go to school wherein there was one juvenile who was also studying in that school, who was not represented by me. But along with him was another fellow who was around 14-15 years of age, 16 years of age, and that was Rabu. Both were friends. The story of the prosecution goes that one night, they used to live close by, these two fellows went and knocked at her door seeking water. They wanted water to drink. On that pretext, they knocked at her door. She opened the door and instead of drinking water, they overpowered her and both of them committed gang rape. Her grandfather was sleeping close by, but since he was an old man, he couldn't hear. The girl remonstrated and said that I am going to create a hue and cry. The case of the prosecution is that they got, when that happened, they felt that they are going to get caught. So they said that this evidence, it is better to destroy what is available. They decided to set her ablaze and she was burnt. Subsequent to that, the case of the prosecution goes that when that came to light, these guys ran away from there. People gathered. There were 98% burns, mind you. The entire body was singed. However, the prosecution chose to record 5 dying declarations, not 1 or 2. So one was the aspect as to whether 5 dying declarations could be given in that kind of a state. This was one aspect which I had argued. When I was arguing, because I had gone through the DNA evidence as well, I was conscious of the fact that if the Supreme Court lets me go towards the DNA evidence, I will achieve a breakthrough. But I was conscious of the fact that maybe the Supreme Court will stop me at the dying declaration itself. And that is what the Supreme Court did. Out of the 5 dying declarations, the Supreme Court said that alright, 4 we will not believe, but 1 we will believe. So if you are believing 1, we will not let you go there. And my case was that the trial court and the High Court had based its conviction on the DNA report alone. Saying this, that once the DNA report had shown the presence of the DNA of these 2 persons in the allele table, that was enough for them to say that the case had been proved beyond reasonable doubt. Now I present my case before you. Though I do not have a grouse with what the Supreme Court did, the Supreme Court let me off with a 20-year sentence. Rabu was a young man at that point of time. He was around 28 years of age. By 40 he will be out. So he has some life left. So I don't have a grouse as far as that is concerned, but I have a difference of opinion. Because the report, the DNA report, when analyzed, showed many things. I will come to it one by one. To begin with, as I said, the girl died 4 days after the incident. In those 4 days, no effort was made to draw the blood sample of the girl. No effort was made to draw the sputum sample of the girl, which was easily available, which was the best source of the DNA. Instead, what was taken? And this will surprise each one of you. I had said that the body was completely singed, burnt. They decided to take a few of her pubic hairs. Now, in relation to hair, how many of you have seen a Jain ceremony? When the Jains take Diksha, the ascetics, you see, if I am supposed to take Diksha today, or my friend there who's got a whole mane of hair, it is going to be very painful for you and me. Because what they are going to do is, once you take a Diksha, they will pluck every hair of yours one by one. He may have a better time. Sheshu will have a lesser situation, but yes, he will have some pain as well. So every hair is plucked from its root. Now that is what is required in the DNA examination of hair. Ask me why? Because when the hair is plucked from its root, the nuclei of that particular hair cell comes along with it. And as I told you, the DNA exists in the nucleus of a cell. So hair which is taken from a barber shop will not suffice. So hair which was taken, it was not plucked from the roots in the case of the deceased in Rabu. So there was a question mark there. The cross-examination went to that extent that the doctor was asked when the doctor came, how did you remove the hair? Did you pluck it from its roots or did you just cut it? The answer was that I cut it. So therefore, where was the presence of that DNA which was required, the requisite quantity? Was question number one. Then I come to the allelic table. I have brought the allelic table of Rabu here. Unfortunately, is that going to work? Can you put that slide? It will be very interesting. In fact, I used the Amazon to get out of this projector. Then I suddenly realized, where do I project it?
On the wall.
So I have to project it by myself. So the allelic structure will show. I can pass it around otherwise. They will try and they can work it out somewhere. See, this is the allelic table which was given along with the report in Rabu's case. Now in this allelic table, you will find on the first corner, can you just pass it around so you can give it to few people, can look into it one by one. See the table that you see out here, the genetic markers that you see, DS31358, you've got these markers here. This table is going till 24, the first column. That 24 columns that you see, these are the locuses where the variation is studied. When I had started with the lecture, I had told you that in the junk DNA, there are specific sites which a forensic scientist will study and identify. These are those 24 sites where material in relation to the alleles are studied. Now when you see the DNA profile, this is the DNA profile, the first column, DNA profile obtained from source pubic hair of the injured Anjali. That is the DNA material, source material which they got, which was the pubic hair which was cut and not plucked. First point. The second point, in relation to that, the alleles that you see, for instance, come to the one which the allele which is there, the site which is there in bold, number 9, D2S441 at this location. You will find the allele as far as the girl is concerned, the deceased is concerned, it is 1111 at point 1111. One from the mother, one from the father. When you go a little further, the next table is male mixed DNA profile obtained from the vaginal slide. There is a vaginal swab which is taken in a rape case, and that is seen. When that is seen, you will find that in the vaginal swab there exists mixed DNA. Now in that very column 9, you will find that there is 11, 12 and 13, which is the mixed DNA which was taken from the vaginal swab. When you go further, the next 2 columns will show you source was DNA for blood from the juvenile. Blood sample was drawn of the juvenile. That was the next table, the next column to be compared. See the allele which is there. The allele is 1212. Similarly, when you see that of Rabbu, which is the next last column, it is 1617. There is the presence of a third person which is in the form of 13. Do you see the allele 13 anywhere else? Which shows that there was a third person present there. Similarly, you go to the next column, which is 13, column number 13. In that you will find an extra allele 16, which is not there in either of those, either in the sample of this person, the juvenile, or in the sample of Rabbu. I am trying to show you the presence of the third person there. Now, come thereafter to the next column, 15, at that site. Again you have 13, which is not available. Then come to the next column, 16. You have 12, which is not available. So therefore, by this report, by going through this report carefully, I was able to come to a conclusion that there probably was a third person. The case of the prosecution was based on 2 persons. The case of the prosecution was based on circumstantial evidence. There was no direct evidence. The dying declarations were unbelievable, because with 98% burns, with the administration of pethidine, the lady was not in a position to speak. The Supreme Court agreed on 4 of them, but decided to not agree on 1 of them, and did not want me to go further. This was able to show that there was the presence of another person apart from these 2, which showed, and what is the defense supposed to do in a circumstantial evidence case? You all know Sharad Bidich and Sharda, the landmark judgment. What does it say? That the prosecution has to build its case brick by brick. And what does the defense have to do? What have I to do as a defense lawyer? I only have to pull 1 brick out. So if I am able to show that there was the presence of a third person there, the story of the prosecution falls. So that is why I said that at times these reports can be of great help to you. At times these reports will be able to reach at that place where we could not have imagined. And this was happening when? This was happening in the Supreme Court, because nobody attempted a cross-examination of the witnesses in the trial court. Therefore, we come back to that story. I still remember Justice Varyava, who was there in this August court. Once, while appreciating the roles of trial court lawyers and appellate lawyers, this is what he had to say. A trial court lawyer is an artist. We appellate lawyers are only art critics. We can't paint. They know how to paint a painting. So therefore the role of a trial court lawyer is so important, because if this cross-examination had been done in the right way, this man would have been prevented from going to the gallows. He was sent to the gallows. It was a death reference. Somehow this report came to his rescue at some point. Of course, the Supreme Court did look into it, but did not want to go there. So therefore it decided that life will not be life. Normally a death sentence results into life being life. But Rabbu got away with 20 years. Of which 10 had already gone. So he had to spend, 15 had already gone, he had to spend 5 more. So that was munificent of them. I have no grounds to what they did. I have to accept what they have given. So I try to explain that away. Whenever Rabbu troubles me in the night, I try to explain that away with Manoj. That it is not a perfect science. It's based on probability. So therefore that is the defense I am now placing before you of the Supreme Court's judgment. For the Supreme Court. That they were right in their way. I am right in my way is what I feel. I leave it to you people to decide what happens when it happens like this. Now having said this, I will leave this august audience with a little food for thought in a hypothetical situation to give you an example as to how the science of DNA works. Now this hypothetical situation, I know I am conscious that I may be overshooting time. Have I, Sheshu?
I think we will go for part 2.
No, I will wind up with this. I will leave this for you people to ruminate. This is cooked up by me, but each one of you will have to decide the role as such in relation to the importance of a DNA analysis. There is a guest who is invited to attend to dinner at the house of a friend. Right? I think Sheshu is invited. Sorry, Sheshu. He's a very dear friend, so I can't let him alone. Because he doesn't let me alone. He's invited to a dinner. Poor Sheshu goes there. He's a vegetarian fellow. He's into dieting. He doesn't eat much. So he comes to dinner. The friend invites him. His children are there. 2 children are there who are grown-ups. He's got a wife. Sheshu comes in. He greets the husband. He shakes hands with him like he shook hands with me. He greets the wife. They sit down on the dining table, have some conversation. The children also come. So they ask Sheshu, what is it that you will have? Sheshu says, in the night I normally have a very light dinner. I can see some fruits, I will have some fruits. So they felt bad, but they said, okay, we can't say no to a friend. So they said, sir, how would you like the fruits? You like them to be cut or you like to have them as such? Sheshu says, I am good at cutting. I can see a knife there, I will cut it with myself. So they offer the fruits. So some apples are cut. Some pomegranates are cut. He cuts them with the knife there. It's a normal knife. After which he partakes the fruits and he leaves. Later on, somebody sees, when he says his buys and goes, the neighbors see him walking out of the gate. Next day it is discovered that the husband has been stabbed. And he dies. He's dead. And he's stabbed by that knife by which my friend had cut fruits. There was a last seen evidence who said that I saw Sheshu leaving. Now poor Sheshu is stuck. They said that they analyzed at the knife. They found there was some DNA. They did some tests. Some DNA matched. Now Sheshu was in trouble. There was DNA there. Interestingly, that knife was used for cutting vegetables and for cutting fruits there. The lady also used to cut vegetables. Her DNA was also there. The husband also used to cut vegetables. A little bit of trace of his DNA was also there. The children of that house were also there. But then would that be defense enough? Because he was the stranger in that house. He came and he left last. So here comes the rule. Now DNA, presence of DNA, it can only probabilize the presence of a particular person there. Or if his DNA had not been found, he would have been said, no, it is not Sheshu. But his DNA was there. That DNA which was there was touch DNA. Because he shook hands, his DNA got transferred. So there was some in the hands of the husband also. He got hold of the knife, something got transferred there. Similarly, in relation to the others as well. Now comes the conundrum. Now what does the defense do? the defense did some digging up. It worked on the situation. It found that the husband was having an affair with the closest friend of the wife. That was one thing which the defense was able to lay its hands on. The defense was also able to lay its hands on that the children were teenagers, and as teenagers normally rebel, and they were sons. Sons have an angst against their fathers, don't they? At the growing age. So the father had, been scolding them, and they were not getting along. That also came to light. There was a reason for the other DNAs also to be there. So the question that I am leaving all of you to ponder with, I will conclude this session with that the DNA to a certain extent can go only this much. The rest has to be done by us. It is a tool which can be used. We can explain the presence of our friend that he only cut the vegetables. He only cut the fruit that he had that day. He did nothing else. There was no animus. He was called as a friend. He went there to attend dinner. That's it. And this is coupled with the motive which was there in relation to the wife. She had an animus because this man was having an affair with her best friend. There was an animus who are the children also. They didn't like their father. So it is up to the defense to build itself. The material is available. It could go this way or it could go that way. I conclude my lecture with this thought for all of you to ponder on the importance of DNA and forensics. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Haran. Such a powerful, enlightened
So much.
science, law, and everything. We are highly grateful to you. The time which you have very this thing.
See, Sheshu and me go back to a very, very long time. I think it is privileged. It is my privilege that he decided to call me to deliver a lecture here amongst this august audience. I am greatly honored. Thank you so much.
I request Harish to give a word of thanks. After that, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. It is indeed my honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the Friday group, particularly G.Seshagiri Rao sir, whose tireless devotion continues to inspire us every day. At the very outset, I express...
Let me tell you, he has inspired a group in the Delhi High Court.
Indeed.
It is the Tuesday group.
Indeed, sir.
It started because of this Friday group. So you are the primary director.
At the outset, I express our profound gratitude to
so
Senior Advocate Haran sir for gracing this occasion and presenting this lecture on such an erudite topic. Sir, the manner in which you presented the lecture, such illustrative approach, is sure going to leave impression on each one of us here. And I'm sure each one of us will go on and think over, ponder over this issue. At least it has definitely created an interest in me, which I think is one of your greatest contributions, sir. And moving on, a special word of appreciation for the members of the Friday group here. Because of them, we are here, and everyone gets to see such lecture. So I also thank this opportunity to thank distinguished senior advocates and the younger members of the bar here for their presence and their support. Thank you once again, sir.
Once again, I apologize for being a little late.
Now you ask this.